It sounds impossible. A bird that could hunt humans, a creature from nightmares, not nature. But this wasn't a story. It wasn't a myth. It was real. A monster once ruled the skies of ancient New Zealand. A predator with wings 3 meters wide, claws the size of a tiger's, and a killing grip strong enough to crush bone. They called it Haast's eagle. To the Ambori, it was Poakai, the god of death. And they didn't invent it out of fear. They remembered it out of survival. This is the story of the monster bird that hunted humans. Long before the first human set foot on the islands, New Zealand was a world apart, cut off from every continent. It became a sanctuary for birds, and only birds. No wolves, no big cats, no mammals at all. Just wings, feathers, and silence. In the forests, giant moa grazed some 12 feet tall, heavy as a small car. Gentle giants with no natural enemies, but every paradise breeds its shadow. High above the valleys, a shape waited in the fog, silent, patient, watching. That shadow was Haast's, Haast's eagle. It was unlike any other raptor to ever live, its body built for ambush, not flight. Wings short and broad to twist through trees, legs thick as a man's wrist. Talons curved like daggers. It didn't soar, it struck. From still air to deadly motion in a heartbeat, the sound, a thunderclap of wings, then nothing but screams and snapping bone, a single strike to the neck. The talons drove deep, puncturing feathers, flesh, spine. The moa collapsed under its own weight, life leaving in moments. For the eagle, it was perfection. Kill, feed, disappear. A ghost in daylight. But paradise never stays untouched. Across the Pacific, people were moving navigators, guided by stars and courage. They sailed into the unknown, finding new islands one by one, and around 700 years ago, they reached Aotearoa, New Zealand. They brought stories, fire, and tools, but they had never seen a land like this. Forests, thick as smoke, mountains rising straight from the sea. Creatures that didn't fear them. The moa walked right up to them. Food that didn't run, a hunter's dream. They didn't know something else was watching. The Haast's eagle had never seen humans. It didn't understand what they were. It saw only movement, and instinct took over. Imagine the moment you walk through mist, trees whispering in wind. A shadow crosses the light. The air changes. Silence deepens. Then, impact. Claws the size of your hand slam into your shoulders. Wings beat around you like thunder. You're lifted off your feet. A scream. Half yours, half the wind. The forest closes again. Nothing left but echoes. The Maori told the story simply. It came from the clouds and took the man. They called it Poakai, a spirit that punished the proud, a guardian of the mountains, a killer in the mist. Centuries later, science would confirm what legend had already known. Haast's eagle was no myth. It was P6 and violence, perfected. Its wings weren't built for long flight. They were built for surprise. 80 kilometers an hour through trees, silent as smoke. Each talon could press 500 pounds, enough to crush a skull, enough to pierce a lung. One strike, one scream, silence. Again, unlike modern eagles that slice and wait, Haast's killed instantly. A strike to the spine, a beak, like a hooked blade tearing through life. Everything about it whispered the same message. Power without mercy, and yet, even monsters obey the rules of nature. They kill only because they must. That balance would soon break. When the Polynesian settlers spread through the islands, the forests began to change. Fire cleared the land, moa became food, and the eagle's world began to shrink. Within a century, the moa were nearly gone. For Haast's eagle, that meant starvation. At first, it hunted smaller birds. Then, out of hunger, it looked toward the fires of men. Archaeologists have found bones in caves with puncture marks matching its claws. Parallel gouges in ribs, talon-sized holes in skulls. Proof that once, in that narrow valley of time, humans were prey. For the first time, our species had to look up and realize something far larger was looking down. The hunters had become the hunted. But power never guarantees survival. As quickly as Haast's eagle had risen, it began to fade. Without moa, its food vanished. Without forest, its cover disappeared. Chicks starved in their nests. Adults took desperate risks, diving at humans and never flying back. In less than 2 human lifetimes, the sky fell silent. The great shadow was gone. Yet legends are harder to kill than flesh. The Amatori still spoke of it, a giant bird, punisher of men, keeper of the mountains. They said if you walk alone in the highlands, you can still feel the wind of its wings. When scientists unearthed the bones in the 1800s, they couldn't believe what they found. Talons longer than a man's fingers, leg bones too thick for flight. Proportions that broke every rule of avian anatomy. At first, they thought it was a dinosaur, but the truth was stranger. It was Hanegle, the largest ever to live. DNA told another secret. It was related to Australia's tiny little eagle, a bird barely a tenth of its size. Somehow, isolation had turned that small hunter into a titan. Nature, trapped on an island, had built a monster. Evolution had taken a whisper and turned it into a roar. Haast's eagle kept its world in balance. It hunted the giants, so the forests could breathe. When it vanished, the balance cracked. Ferns overgrew, seeds went uneaten, the rhythm broke. Every extinction leaves an echo. This one still hums through New Zealand's valleys. Look closely. You'll see it in the forest's shape, in the way birds nest, in the silence that follows thunder. But this story isn't only about the past, it's about us. Because the same pattern that killed Haast's eagle is repeating everywhere. We never meant to destroy it. We just changed the world around it. One spark, one tree cut, one meal too many. Today, it's happening again, not on an island, but across an entire planet. Predators starving as prey vanish, coral bleaching in warming seas. Forests stripped of their guardians, balance tipping, quietly, relentlessly. The eagle wasn't evil, it was necessary. It was balance, given form. We ended Italiano, and now we stand where it once stood, on the edge between power and extinction. The bones of Hieratus murray lie silent in museums, now white, clean, peaceful. But those bones still speak. They tell us dominance doesn't last. They tell us strength means nothing without balance. They tell us extinction rarely happens to one species alone. Every fall drags another with it. We think we're different because we can see the past. But seeing isn't enough if we don't learn. Haast's eagle was the perfect predator. It ruled its skies for millennia, but perfection is fragile. All it took was one change, a single piece removed from the puzzle, and the monster became memory. Nature remembers its monsters, not with fear, but with warning. The forests still whisper its name. The wind still carries its story. And when you stand beneath the New Zealand sky, you can almost feel it. A breath of air, a flicker of shadow, a memory of wings. For a heartbeat, you look up, and you understand what it meant to live under something bigger than fear. Because monsters are never truly gone. They live in the world they leave behind, and sometimes they live in you and me. What would you do if you looked up and saw a shadow stretching across the sky? Would you run? Would you fight? Would you freeze as they did and wait for the rush of wings? Tell me in the comments, because legends like this aren't just stories, they're mirrors. And sometimes, when you look into them, juicy, us.